Well, it's been another roller coaster week for Celtic fans, and once again, the transfer window didn't disappoint, though not necessarily in the way many were hoping for. Last night, just before the curtain fell, Celtic made what appears to be their final move of the summer, bringing in a free agent who's been the subject of plenty of debate, Kelechi Iheanacho, or Iheanacho, or Iano, depending on how you prefer to butcher it. No matter the name, this is the guy we've brought in to hopefully lead the line. But the question hanging over everything now is simple. Is he really the right man? Or, to put it more bluntly, is he as bad as some folk are already saying? Now, let's be clear, this signing wasn't announced with any great fanfare. No photos with the scarf above the head, no big sit-down interview, not even a shirt number confirmed on the official site. Just a quiet wee article after 11 at night, saying he signed on a one-year deal with an option for another. For a club of Celtic size, in a window where fans have been begging for ambition, it felt underwhelming, to say the least. Brendan Rodgers has come out and said that he knows the player well, that we're getting him in what should be his peak years as he approaches 29. And look, Brendan has worked with him before. He's probably had more influence on this move than anyone else at the club. But you still have to ask, is this really what Celtic needed? See, there's a lot of skepticism surrounding this one. He's a free agent. He wasn't the first choice. Hell, he wasn't even the second or third. This is a guy who picked Middlesbrough over us just a few months back, and not a lot's changed since then, other than maybe his agent's phone ringing a bit less. Now, we're going to break this down. We're going to try and be fair, give you the full picture, because, yes, there are red flags all over this signing, but there are also reasons to hold on to at least a sliver of hope. Let's rewind a bit and try to understand who Kelechi Iheanacho actually is and where things have gone wrong, or right, for him over the years. So, born and raised in Nigeria, Kelechi was snapped up by Manchester City on his 18th birthday. And at that time, he was considered one of the brightest young forwards coming out of Africa. In fact, he didn't take long to make an impression. In the 2015 to 2016 season, he broke through at City, scoring some big goals and building up serious hype. The following year, he actually scored against Celtic in the Champions League, equalizing for City after Patrick Roberts had given us the lead. So in a strange twist, he now becomes one of the rare players who've scored against us in a competitive match and then gone on to wear the hoops. His numbers at City were decent. 21 goals and 64 appearances, 12 of those in the Premier League. Not world-beating, but not bad for a young player trying to break into a star-studded squad. Then came the big move to Leicester City in 2017, where he signed for a whopping £25 million. That was serious money at the time, and not the sort of fee you pay for a gamble. He stayed at Leicester for 7 seasons. That's longer than many of us realized, to be honest. In that time, he won the FA Cup, tasted relegation, and helped the club earn promotion again. 232 appearances, 61 goals, and 36 assists. Again, not earth-shattering numbers, but they suggest a player capable of contributing when in form. His goals per minute record worked out at roughly 1 every 178 minutes. Not elite, but respectable. But things started to unravel last season. He moved to Sevilla, and it all went south very quickly. 11 appearances, only 3 goals. And here's the thing. All 3 of those came in early Copa del Rey matches against lower-tier Spanish sides. He didn't score once in La Liga. Didn't look like the same player. And it clearly didn't work out there. By February, he was sent on loan to Middlesbrough, a championship side fighting for promotion, and again, he failed to make any real impact. 1 goal in 15 appearances. That's 1 goal in over 760 minutes of football. And that goal? It came against Oxford United, who, with all due respect, aren't exactly Real Madrid. And this is where the concerns start piling up. It's not just about the numbers. It's not even just about the fact that he's bounced between clubs. It's the question of motivation, of fitness, of what version of Kelechi Iheanacho we're actually getting. Because right now, it doesn't feel like we're getting the same hungry young lad who came through at City. It feels like we're getting a player who's lost his way. A player who's already had the big move, made the money, and now finds himself at a crossroads. And he's chosen Celtic. Not because we were first on his list, but maybe because we were the only club left who'd still take the chance. Fans at Middlesbrough were less than impressed with what they saw. There were complaints about his fitness, his effort, even his weight. And this wasn't just keyboard warriors having a go. This was raised with his manager at Sevilla as well, who had to publicly downplay concerns about Iheanacho being out of shape. When a manager has to answer questions about a player's weight in a press conference, that's not a good sign. Now, we've had players in similar situations before. Scott Sinclair comes to mind. A player whose career had stalled, who reignited things under Brendan Rodgers at Celtic and became a fan favorite. Is it possible that we're looking at something similar here? Maybe. But Iheanacho does feel like a different case. He's not coming off a run of bad luck. He's coming off years of underperformance. And it's not like he's had much football recently. A handful of minutes in preseason with Sevilla. A couple of appearances for Nigeria in May, but nothing since. His last competitive match was months ago. So even if you're hoping for some sort of redemption arc, don't expect him to be match fit anytime soon. This isn't a guy who's going to hit the ground running. He'll need time and patience. And even then, there's no guarantee we'll see a turnaround. Still, if we're really trying to be optimistic here, there are a couple of things to hang on to. First, his Premier League experience. You don't spend nearly a decade in that league without some serious quality. Second, his connection to Brendan Rodgers, who clearly believes there's still a player in there worth bringing to Celtic. And maybe, just maybe, Rodgers is the one man who can get the best out of him again. And here's another small win. He's not being described as a winger. You laugh, but given some of the vague descriptions we've had in recent windows, this actually feels like progress. What we don't know yet is what number he'll be wearing, but most assume it'll be the number 9, previously worn by Adama. It's the same number he wore at Middlesbrough and Sevilla. Makes sense. But shirt number or not, the real question is whether he's going to earn that number on the pitch. As for the Europa League squad, there's been a bit of speculation around whether he made the cut. The transfer came in just before the deadline, so chances are high he's in. But we'll need to wait for UEFA to confirm it officially. Even so, it's safe to say the timing of the signing was no coincidence. And let's be honest, Celtic fans aren't just frustrated about one transfer. The entire window has left a bad taste. Promises were made. Hopes were raised. And here we are, days away from European competition, wondering how on earth we ended up here again. And this isn't just fans shouting into the void anymore. Last night, a statement was released by the Affiliation of Registered Celtic Supporters Clubs. Now, some of you might not be familiar with who they are, but they represent supporters clubs across the world, groups that follow Celtic home and away and have been around for decades. And their message was crystal clear. There's growing concern about the direction of this club. They pointed to the lack of ambition, the failure to strengthen ahead of crucial European qualifiers, and a growing feeling that there's no long-term plan. They called on CEO Michael Nicholson to come out and explain the club's vision. And they didn't mince words. They want transparency, accountability, and something resembling a proper football strategy. And you know what? They're right. The silence from the board has been deafening. And while we'd all love to believe Nicholson is going to appear on Celtic TV with a heartfelt explanation, no one's really holding their breath. The idea that Celtic can just cruise through transfer windows with vague statements and last-minute patchwork signings is no longer flying. Not with this support. The frustration has built up to a boiling point, and for good reason. Every year we hear the same talk. We're building for Europe, we're backing the manager, we've got a long-term vision. But when it comes down to it, when the moment actually arrives, when the pressure is on to show intent, what do we get? A couple of free transfers, a loan or two, and a whole lot of silence from those running the show. Now, nobody's expecting Celtic to throw silly money around like some English clubs. We're not daft. We know there's a budget. We know the market's changed. But what's hard to accept is the lack of urgency, the lack of clear thinking, the feeling that we're always scrambling rather than strategizing. When we were knocked out of the Champions League qualifiers last season, we were told it would be different this time. Stronger, more prepared, more ambitious. And here we are again, standing on the edge of another European campaign with more questions than answers. And it's not just the fans who've noticed. Brendan Rodgers and Callum McGregor have both made comments that, while measured, don't exactly paint the picture of a club firing on all cylinders. When your manager and captain are essentially calling for better support from upstairs, that's not something to ignore. That's a flashing red light. So the statement from the supporters clubs hits differently this time. It's not just noise. It's the kind of pressure that demands a response. But will we get one? That's the real question. Because let's be honest, When was the last time Celtic's board showed any real accountability to the support? When was the last time someone sat in front of a camera and gave honest, detailed answers about transfers, planning, or the club's direction? The truth is, a lot of fans feel completely disconnected from the people running Celtic. And not just on Twitter or in comment sections. This is something you hear in the stands, in pubs, on buses to away games. There's a sense that those at the top are coasting, riding the wave of domestic dominance without really pushing the club forward. And for a club of this size, with this history, that's just not good enough. It's not about demanding instant success every season. Celtic fans aren't stupid. We understand that football goes in cycles. But what people want is a feeling that we're trying, that there's a plan, that when we win, it's part of something bigger. And when we fall short, it's not because we've failed to prepare, it's because we genuinely gave it a go. Take the last night of the transfer window as a perfect example. It wasn't just the underwhelming signing that annoyed people, it was the chaos, the confusion, the lack of clarity around who's in, who's out, who's in the European squad, and who's not. It felt reactive, scrambled, and at a club like Celtic, that shouldn't be the standard. Bringing in Kelechi Iheanacho at the very last minute might not be a disaster, but it doesn't scream organization either. Especially when you've had months to plan, scout, negotiate. The fact that fans are sitting trying to piece together who might get dropped from the Europa League squad just to make space. It's a joke. Supporters shouldn't be doing maths just to work out how many players fit in the 24 slots, because we've not got enough homegrown lads anymore. That's amateur hour. And when you look at the squad depth, or lack thereof, it's even more frustrating. Injuries happen. Players lose form. We all know that. So when you're heading into a packed fixture list, with league games, cup ties, and European matches, you need a bench full of options. Real options. Not just names filling shirts. Instead, we've got gaps. We've got players still betting in. And we've got key areas, like striker, where one injury leaves us in real trouble. Is Kelechi going to lead the line? Is he even fit enough to start? What if he's not? Then what? We're suddenly back to square one, relying on players out of position or still adapting to the system. Let's talk about the Europa League squad for a moment, because that's where things really start to show the cracks. With Adama Ida gone and Stephen Welsh no longer available, we're already down 2 from the squad we used in the qualifiers. And because of the UEFA homegrown rule, we actually have to shrink our overall squad to 24 players, not 25. That rule says we need 8 locally trained players. We've only got 7, which means we lose a full spot just to comply with the rules. So then you factor in the new signings, Balikwisha, Sarah, Kelechi, Tinky. 4 new lads coming in. But we've only got space to add 2 if we're already at 23 players. So now Rodgers has to make cuts. And that's not a position any manager wants to be in after a summer of signings. You want to be adding strength, not deciding who to leave out. And the decisions aren't easy. You might see someone like Callum Osman drop out. That one's straightforward. But then what? Does Young get cut, given his situation and the fact we've now got depth on the wings? Possibly. And for the final spot, well, that could be someone like Austin Trusty, who doesn't seem to be in Rodgers' good books yet. Or even Ho Bernardo, who's sitting as our 6th choice midfielder. No matter how you slice it, it's not ideal. And that's just the European squad. What happens domestically when injuries pile up? When players need rotation? We're already stretched before a ball's even been kicked in the group stages. And don't think for a second this kind of thing goes unnoticed by the dressing room. Players pick up on this stuff. They know when the squad's not right. They know when promises have been made and not delivered. And for someone like Brendan Rodgers, who returned to the club with a very clear expectation of backing and ambition, it must be hard not to feel a bit let down. He came back under a cloud of skepticism. Let's not forget that. But he won fans over by saying the right things, showing belief, and making it clear he wasn't here to coast. He wanted to build something, compete in Europe, take the club forward. And what's he been given? A disjointed transfer window and last-minute scraps. Now, don't get me wrong. There's still a chance this all works out. Maybe Iheanacho rediscovers his form. Maybe Balikwisha hits the ground running. Maybe a few of the young players step up and surprise us. But none of that excuses the lack of structure. Hope is not a strategy. And when the support is already simmering, statements like the one we saw last night carry real weight. People are fed up. They want more than spin. They want answers. They want the board to step up and show that they understand what this club is meant to be. So what happens now? That's the big question. Will Michael Nicholson come out and face the support? Will there be some sort of communication from the board to calm things down? I wouldn't bet on it. But if they're smart, they'll realize that this situation can't just be ignored into submission. Because the anger this time doesn't feel like a flash in the pan. It feels deep. It feels lasting. And some fans are already talking about action. Not just online moaning, actual action. Withdrawing from ticket schemes, staying away from matches, withholding financial support. Now, whether that's the right move or not is up for debate. It's a personal decision. But what's clear is that something has to give. Because you can only push a support so far before they push back. And we've seen this story before. We've seen what happens when the board underestimates the fans. When they think a few wins will paper over the cracks. That might work for a while, but not forever. Especially not when you've got a squad that feels incomplete and a fan base that feels ignored. So the next few weeks are going to be massive. On the pitch, we need results. That's a given. But off the pitch, we need clarity. We need leadership. And we need someone, anyone, at the top of this football club to act like they care. Because right now, it's not just about one signing or one transfer window. It's about trust, about belief, about whether the people running Celtic are capable of doing what's needed to take us forward, or whether they're content just treading water, hoping we don't notice we're drifting further away from the clubs we should be competing with. And make no mistake, we should be competing, not just domestically, not just scraping into Europe. We should be aiming higher. That's the standard. That's the expectation. And until the board starts acting like that's the goal, the questions are only going to get louder. So here we are. Another season, another storm. But the support's watching. And this time, they're not just shouting into the void. They're demanding change, demanding answers. And it's up to Celtic now, truly up to them, to decide what comes next. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. Shockwaves have rippled through the footballing world with the sensational news that KASPER Schmeichel, one of the most experienced goalkeepers in modern European football, has just signed with Celtic. The rumor began to swirl late last night, with whispers leaking from Glasgow that the Danish international was spotted in the city, and by early morning the chatter had exploded into a full-blown storm. Schmeichel, who carved his name into the game with Leicester City by lifting the Premier League trophy in that unforgettable 2016 season, had been linked with several clubs across Europe, but few would have predicted a move to Scotland at this stage of his career. Supporters flooded social media with disbelief, excitement, and plenty of speculation about what this could mean for the balance of power in the Scottish Premiership. For a team that has dominated domestically yet still craves respect on the European stage, the arrival of a figure like Schmeichel feels like a signal of intent, a declaration that Celtic are aiming not just to defend their crown, but to raise their ambitions higher than ever before. Rumor or reality, the buzz refuses to calm, and Celtic Park is now the epicenter of European football gossip. What fuels this speculation further is the timing, as Celtic had shown little public sign of dissatisfaction with their current goalkeeping options, leading many to wonder whether this deal has been carefully orchestrated behind closed doors for months. Observers have pointed to subtle hints: the sudden absence of certain keepers from training photos, cryptic social media posts from players, and even travel patterns that were flagged by keen-eyed fans. It is almost as though the entire city of Glasgow has become a detective board, with each supporter piecing together scraps of evidence to confirm what they desperately want to believe. Schmeichel himself has remained tight-lipped, but reports suggest he was impressed by Celtic's vision, the passion of their fan base, and the opportunity to extend his career in an environment where he can become a true leader on and off the pitch. In a league often accused of being predictable, the thought of such a high-profile addition has injected a fresh sense of unpredictability. Rival clubs are already whispering about how this move might force them to rethink their strategies, particularly with the looming European qualifiers where the margin between success and disappointment is razor-thin. Celtic supporters are no strangers to bold signings, but the arrival of a goalkeeper of Schmeichel's pedigree resonates differently. Goalkeepers carry a unique aura, often embodying resilience, leadership, and longevity, and KASPER brings with him a name steeped in history, thanks to his legendary father, Peter Schmeichel, who carved out his own story at Manchester United. For Celtic, this is more than just filling a position on the pitch. It is a statement about identity, ambition, and stature. The boys' faithful have always demanded players who not only perform, but embrace the club's rich traditions and fervent support. Schmeichel, with his track record of commanding backlands and his knack for producing moments of brilliance when least expected, could well be the anchor that solidifies Celtic's hopes in Europe. Already, murmurs can be heard of how Rangers might react, as competition between the old firm is as much about symbolic victories as points on the table. Should Celtic truly unveil Schmeichel in green and white, it will echo far beyond the borders of Scotland, reverberating through the corridors of European football and reminding everyone that even in a league perceived as smaller, bold moves can still shake the continent. Yet, despite the excitement, skepticism lingers like mist over the Clyde. Some analysts argue that Schmeichel, now in the latter stages of his career, may not deliver the same level of performance that made him a Premier League champion. Critics question whether this move is more about marketing than sport, a headline-grabbing gesture rather than a calculated footballing decision. The salary demands, the adaptation to the Scottish style of play, and the physical rigors of playing week in, week out on often unforgiving pitches are all factors that cannot be ignored. Detractors also point out the risk of unsettling an established squad, particularly in a position where consistency and trust are paramount. Still, the very fact that such conversations are happening underscores how monumental this signing would be. For Celtic, even whispers of Schmeichel's arrival elevate the club's profile, attracting attention from global outlets and reigniting debates about the Scottish Premiership's ability to draw top talent. Whether this gamble pays off or not, it has already succeeded in pushing Celtic into the headlines, and in the modern game, visibility and reputation can be as valuable as results. Ultimately, what remains is the atmosphere of anticipation, suspense, and intrigue that only football can conjure. Supporters are already imagining the roar at Celtic Park should Schmeichel emerge from the tunnel, clad in green, with the Celtic crest upon his chest. Journalists are preparing columns, pundits are rehearsing their soundbites, and rival fans are nervously calculating the implications. If confirmed, this signing would not simply be about one player joining one club. It would be about narrative, momentum, and the enduring magic of football as theater. In Scotland, where passion for the game runs deep and stories of triumph and rivalry dominate everyday conversation, the idea of KASPER Schmeichel guarding the posts for Celtic feels almost mythic. Whether the move proves to be a stroke of genius or a fleeting experiment, the buzz has already done its work, turning an ordinary week into a momentous chapter in Scottish football lore. Rumor has become legend in record time, and now the entire footballing world waits with bated breath to see if the dream becomes reality, or if it remains just another tantalizing whisper in the unpredictable saga of the beautiful game. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.